Hello and welcome to Life Edge, because life, it just doesn't have to be that mediocre. I'm Sarah Muliadi. I'm filling in for Rick Zanati today, and here we have our wonderful co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. How you doing, Susan?
Hi, it's so great to be here, Sarah. Glad to see you again. It's fun to be hosting again with you.
Yeah,
and we have a great guest, Dr. Steve Tedesco, who's going to talk to us today about a new way to really take advantage of natural gas that's just going to waste right now.
That sounds amazing. All right, so let's get started with our intro. All right, and we're back. So here's Steve. So hey, Steve, how are you doing?
Hi, Steve. Hi. Yeah, and Steve, it's so great to have you here. You've been a guest before, and at that point, we talked about the challenges of running a small business and having an energy company. And since that time, you've been involved in some really cutting-edge technology, and it's something that is applicable today to, like, here in the U.S. and also to the rest of the world when it comes to like stranded gas and natural gas is just not being utilized, might be flared. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more.
Sure. What has happened in the U.S. In the past few years with the introduction of renewables, a lot of gas is needed to help offset power problems when they can't deliver. And in the process, the states and federal regulatory agencies have started to crack down on flaring and venting of natural gas from gas wells, gas fields, that sort of thing. And the fines are getting very significant. In Colorado and North Dakota, they're $15,000 a day. So if you have oil production and you have to flare it, you might get fined, and they'll let you flare it, but they're taking money to do that. And then also in the process, under the Obama administration, 74 nuke and coal-fired plants are being eliminated, and we can't replace those fast enough in terms of the gigawatts that are being lost with new or other forms. So in the process, what we're trying to do is convince operators to sell us their gas to convert to electricity. In the past, also the utility industry is being regulation is being dropped that prevents generation of outside electricity going into their system, so now they have to take it. And then also in the process, because of a lot of brownouts using renewables, a lot of people are going to microgrids. Server farms are going to microgrids. So there's another niche sort of business for potentially for a lot of operators in turning their waste gas into electricity and selling it into the system. But there's a lot of issues for the operators in doing that simply because they want to maximize production, but unfortunately, when you sell to a utility, converting gas to electricity, you have to have a steady stream for at least 5 to 10 years. And that's been another stumbling block. But the way we're approaching it is we're buying gas assets and then simply just controlling the amount of gas that's produced. So in other words, if you could do 10 million a day today, and then in 10 years it's a million, well, that doesn't help you in converting to electricity because you need to keep it at some flat rate. So we would start selling or converting 2 million cubic feet a day, and then at the end of the 10 years, by maintaining the reservoir properly, you would end up having the capacity to fulfill the contract. It's the sort of thing that it's a new business. There's a lot of opportunity.
So, Steve, you're a little bit hung up right now on your phone, but I'm going to jump in here and say that I think this sounds really interesting, and the reason I say that is because currently it sounds like what happens is this gas, natural gas that's produced, and it burns clean. It's much better than coal, and even better than gas. I mean, like natural gas in your, well, not natural gas, gasoline in your car. So it has a lot of advantages. But what people may not realize is that sometimes there are problems in producing natural gas. And so can you explain to us, Steve, why this is useful, what happens to, what is stranded gas? Steve, can you hear me? Well, I might have to answer the question for Steve. Stranded gas happens in wells where there are low volumes of gas production. It's a great energy source, and it burns clean. But if it's not enough volume, then it doesn't have enough volume to go into the cross-country pipelines. And then also, sometimes gas can be stranded because all the wells around it stop producing. And so it's just stranded there. And then also there may be some problems with wanting to protect the environment and not have as many pipelines. So this is a way to use the gas locally and have an autonomous source of gas and electricity, because you're converting that gas directly into electricity, so you're able to avoid all the controversies of constructing pipelines. Is that correct, Steve, or am I oversimplifying?
Yes, it is. No, well, no, you're saying it correctly. Sorry that I cut out.
All right.
Anyway, so the opportunity here is to create revenue. It's estimated that $500 million is lost every year in terms of flaring and venting gas that could go to the operator and the royalty owners in terms of additional revenue. And in the process, help to reduce the climate change footprint of many of these companies and start to basically eliminate the emissions problems that have been with us for several years.
That's really good. So if I understand correctly, how much is being flared off and lost every year in terms of natural gas? And when Steve says flared, he means it's burned off instead of being put into a pipeline or converted. So how much is wasted every year or lost?
Well, based on $3, about $500 million a year, if not more.
$500 million. That's incredible.
Yeah. And
wow.
Some operators convert the gas to use for their operations, but that's only a small amount. A lot of times they have to flare excess gas, especially in the shale plays.
I've heard of that, yes, but so if you convert this gas into electricity on the site, how exactly does that happen?
Well, there's basically a gas turbine or compressor that takes the gas and then turns it to electricity. So $3 gas generates about 2 cents a kilowatt hour, essentially. And the goal is to actually set the utility at 7 to 9 cents or 10 cents, especially for the microgrid. But in areas like West Texas, you have a lot of gas, so it's right now problematic in terms of converting that to electricity. They don't have the infrastructure. There's a lot of potential gas there that can be converted and subsequent to California or Texas markets as needed. And that's one of the other issues is, like Wyoming is sort of far away also, but then there's a lot of Kansas and Illinois. Michigan and the Marcellus, for example, is in the heart of areas that are consuming a tremendous amount of electricity. And right now, based on projections, we're going to be needing several gigawatts of power plants to offset the loss of the coal-fired plants, but also because of these solar farms that are being created, they take a tremendous amount of electricity. They're just sucking it in left and right. So, I mean, the long-term effect of what's going on converting renewables is causing industry to look for alternatives, and natural gas that's being vented with flare is one of those. Actually, in some areas, it might reopen gas fields that were abandoned prematurely to provide gas for electrical needs.
So if your gas is stranded and you convert it to electricity, but you're still far away from the major markets, what do you do in that case? Like you were talking about the Permian Basin. For those of you who are not familiar with the Permian Basin, it's in West Texas and also in southeastern New Mexico, and it's not that close to major metropolitan centers. So is there an electrical grid that can be plugged into, or what do you propose as a solution?
Well, just in pipelines to take away the oil, they are putting in more power lines and the electricity to run their operations. But the amount of gas they generate is far in excess of the, if you convert it to electricity, what they need. So you can actually reverse the flow of those power lines and send them out as transmission lines, or put in transmission lines the same way. And as right now, electrical costs are fairly cheap in certain parts of the country, but that's changing. Coal is a very dense source of energy, whereas wind is very non-dense and scattered across large areas, but eventually we'll need more solutions like natural gas, simply because the coal-fired plants are being shut down, even though technology exists to make them essentially clean in terms of emissions. So the focus is more and more to go to natural gas, both for generating just power, but also for generating electricity to offset brownouts and blackouts that are actually occurring in several parts of the country. California is one. We're seeing them in Kansas, which is a source of a lot of energy, but diverting to renewables is creating havoc in terms of providing power when we need it. We also are seeing that in other areas around the country that have gone to solar. So both of those, their main problem is the lack of battery technology. Right now our battery technology is really insufficient to store any energy, plus it costs a lot of money to make batteries. But it looks like that, like Tesla, a battery system down in Adelaide, Australia, where they converted completely, and I think in South Wales, to wind farms, and subsequently they had a lot of brownouts, so Tesla put in a battery system that would serve 100,000 people. The problem is it's fully charged, and if that's all they drew from, it would last 5 minutes. So obviously the battery technology is not there yet. There's advances, but the advances are more like baby steps than what we really need.
Well, it's true that the battery technology needs to improve, and that's, in other words, electricity storage needs to improve. Have you talked to Elon Musk about having having charging stations near the?
Well, if you drive downtown Denver, or let's say New York City or Boston, what you'll notice is a lot of cars parked on very nice avenues. The problem is putting in charging stations in cities where everything is developed, to ripping up the sidewalks and putting in long electrical lines. And I think some of these, recently we were seeing that many cities are shutting down driverless cars. So putting in large electrical charging stations around the town areas that are where millennials or baby boomers or that sort of thing retire or have their houses, the electrical grid put in. And the other issue is you still need the energy from somewhere, and the wind and renewables, solar, cannot provide that energy needed for electric cars. Also, Elon Musk's batteries are actually out of date, and they tend to catch fire. And this is a problem with some battery technologies. Also, there's a new technology storing electricity and ammonia that the scientists down there are working on. The only problem is they can charge it, but they can't get it out very fast. So the technologies are being developed, but they're very slow to being developed. Also, a lot of batteries are made with lithium, and it's a very sort of PC way to make things. I mean, same with windmills. You have to strip mine to get the lithium and the aluminum, the rare earths, underground mine, or sometimes strip mine, and they're generating emissions that the windmills don't have. So we're still back to the same square one. We need to find technology that obviously has a minimal it's not really, and that's natural gas. It is a hydrocarbon. Is that it's a very simple molecule and easily converted to electricity. And so subsequently, it's going to remain in the forefront, and they're now projecting natural gas shortages a few years from now, simply because the utility industry is augmenting their renewables with this, and that means increasing the consumption.
That's a good point. Now, one thing that would be interesting to look at is really taking a look at what China is doing in battery technology, and maybe partnering with them at some level, because they have made a commitment to change to 100% electric cars by 2020 as part of the China Beautiful project. Now, I don't know where they are with that, but and who, I don't know what kind of battery technologies that they are developing, but they are going all out in technologies for batteries.
I agree with that, but the other issue with, for example, with vehicles, is that in my own experience with oil field personnel and operations, taking 6 hours to charge your truck during the day isn't going to work. So transportation between major cities in the U.S., it would be nice to convert to electricity as long as there's charging stations and you can charge in half an hour or an hour. But that's not likely. One of the issues with batteries is they don't charge or get rid of their charge fast enough to be efficient right now. Gasoline is still the most efficient engine out there. It will probably remain so for a number of years to come. But I have to applaud the Chinese because they are making every attempt to reduce their emissions, even though they have sort of...
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And then another thing that comes to mind is a micro station for compressing the natural gas and having miniature LNG plants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. And we are the largest producer of natural gas in the world. We're also the largest supplier. And more of our gas is going over the seas. It's going in the last few years in the long term, maybe 20 years max, because these are short-lived wells, and there's only so many places you can frack and drill in so many basins. But natural gas is going to be a major concern as a strategic resource in the coming years. And subsequently, there'll be a lot of hunt for more gas in further places further afield. Now, the biggest problem right now is with India and Africa in terms they are going gangbusters with coal. Japan is going back to coal because of the incident with the tsunami and the nuclear power plant. And then the biggest polluter, based on a lot of statistics, is Russia, which has done nothing to curb its emissions, but they do have large gas fields. So, we're seeing a lot happen in the U.S. Last year, the emissions were down in the U.S. and Canada, and they'll continue to climb. But the next thing is that a lot of operators are now recognizing, converting natural gas to, rather than a waste product, is converting it to a usable resource with revenue, which is the best way to go.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. Are you using a new technology to generate electricity? Is it something?
No, all the technologies have been around for 30 years. Oh, okay. They've gotten more efficient because of these regulatory fines that are occurring, and the push for climate change. Suddenly, everybody's focused on it. It's like everything else. When a disaster happens, suddenly everybody pays attention to it.
Okay, I guess I'm jumping in here. Sorry about that. But
okay.
I thought that your technology was new. What you're using?
No. What's new is the way we're using. We're sort of a hybrid. We're not a utility and not really an oil and gas company. The technology is Caterpillar is only making a big push to sell this type of technology, whereas 2 or 3 years ago it was just an afterthought. And then the emissions from this technology are getting better and better. The technology, I'd like to say we have new technology, but it's more of an application of being an operator, knowing how to get the gas out of the ground and then how to convert it into electricity. A lot of operators for years didn't like dealing with utilities, and utilities didn't like dealing with oil and gas operators because it was just two very distinct industries. And then, but we're looking over in Taiwan and other places of helping them find gas resources onshore and offshore, excuse me. And recently we've been awarded a contract with Camp Pendleton to put in a microgrid. The military has been ordered by chiefs of staff in the next 4 years that they have to go to self-sufficiency. Everything is off the grid with them. One of the real issues is in Southern California, where SoCal Edison has bought parts made in China that are all infected with viruses. And so it represents a major threat to the grid. So now the military is dealing with this in terms of taking all of their bases, at least in the continental U.S., and making them self-sufficient. And there are several bases in areas where there's conventional oil and gas, and they can do that. Then there's some bases that find a different source of for their microgrid.
That's a really good idea. Now, Sarah, you're in California right now.
Mm-hmm.
How is everything going with the fires?
Well, the big fire that was around, like we have the hill fire that was very close to us. It's like an exit down on the freeway because we're here in Camarillo. It was in the Camarillo
Wow.
Springs area, and then the Woolsey fire is the big one that's hit like Thousand Oaks down to LA, and I think it's mostly contained now. And yeah, it was really scary because the winds were so strong, and we just didn't know like where the fire is going to spread to. It was big, very very risky, and yeah, very very scary. The past week or so, but yeah, we're hoping for rain.
In California, who raises show dogs, collies, and she has an award-winning kennel. It's up kind of near the campfire in Northern California. I was really worried for her.
Yeah, I know, that was really bad.
I know, poor. I mean, I think about that. I think about all the different farms and the wildlife and the people, and just, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But
So, anyway, I was thinking it. I hope everybody stays well.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
So,
Steve, what are your next steps? I mean, if somebody wants to get involved in this, what do they do?
Well, they can give me a call, and we can talk about whether to put in their, if they've got a gas property, we'd like to take a look at it. California is actually one of the areas we're focusing on. The Sacramento Basin, for example, has a gas that's plugged and shut in. So, there's opportunities in a lot of places, and it's just a matter of, if they make economic sense and if we can get into the local grid, which right now, under federal auspices, we should be able to.
yeah, one interesting I saw on your website, you're doing you're generating electricity from biomass as well.
Yes, we're looking at that, and that's more of a local sort of thing. But there is a lot of people who are doing that. We're looking, and biomass is a broad term.
Yeah.
For example, burning in South Carolina leaves a lot of waste. The state of South Carolina trying to find people to come in and take that waste and convert it to electricity rather than sit there. And believe it or not, there's a lot of emissions, methane emissions from that sort of waste just sitting there rotting.
Right,
like hog farms?
Yeah, there's an efficient way to capture that energy and convert to electricity.
Yeah, they have gas compressor or systems that convert the biomass into methane. Just basically turn it into electricity. It's just wood debris, and they convert it into electricity, eliminates the emissions. A lot of these systems that convert are very low emissions, and some are getting very close to being no emissions right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is the future. We have a lot of lumbering around the country. It just depends on what it is, but it's a good way to get rid of the debris. I don't think it would prevent the forest fires you're seeing, but it certainly would help rather than leaving this debris sit there rotted and emit methane all the time.
That would be really good, because methane is so terrible in terms of greenhouse effect. I think how many times worse than CO2? 400 times worse.
Yeah, like
or
30 times
like
worse, but
how much worse?
The neat thing is it's 30 times. 30 times. But,
wow.
Oh, wow.
Right, but the thing people don't realize is methane actually breaks down really fast. Unfortunately for us, the world's forests are growing faster because of the more CO2 in the atmosphere. So we're seeing in many areas in the world increase in forests. So there's an upside to global warming.
I've known we deforested a lot of things, but I had a crazy inspiration yesterday, and maybe you can help develop this, Steve. So I had the idea that, there's this enormous garbage mass in the Pacific, right? And it's floating around.
Yeah.
And so, and like, isn't it the size of like Texas and California together or something like that? Okay, so it's a lot of it's just like floating on kind of close to the surface. So remember the Mayans had this like aquaculture they called chinampas? Why couldn't we turn that entire area into like a salt marsh, and have like a salt marsh chinampas have it growing, and figure out a way to like put like grass, have grass grow on it.
I don't know if you want to do that, but this is, yeah.
Somebody has to mow it.
Well, somebody recently raised $25 million to go collect all of that garbage.
It's too hard to collect it. Why not just seed it? I mean, okay, I don't know how close it is to the surface, but I get the impression that, at least a lot of, on the top, you've got at least some plastic bags and some Adidas sneakers and things like that floating on the top. And so, and you don't really want. I mean, eventually you'd have birds putting nests in it and stuff. But what you really would need is just making sure that it props up. You can start on like the periphery or something to see if it works. But make some chinampas and have some salt marshes. Just study the estuaries and see what grows in that stuff.
Okay.
Susan, Steve already has too many ventures.
I'm no buyer on this one.
I don't know if Steve has enough time to start another company. We were talking about this a little bit before the show, but I was like, oh, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it's like you're president of all these different companies. It's like, how do you do it? So I don't know if he has time for yet another company.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
He
I'm
has
good.
time. he can cull out if you cull the herd a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, related to that, like, last time we were talking about your running Fox's company, and I'm sure you're still doing all kinds of things with your other companies. Like, how do you do that? Like, does your role change with some of the companies that have like matured more? Like, you give more responsibility to someone else, or
right. Well, you have to have good people working for you. And a lot of the stuff we do, I do as an oil and gas operator, is pretty simple. They don't require a lot of multi-million-dollar fracs. We're in conventional plays that are very simple and easy to maintain. Requires very minimal amount of employees, very simple geology and petroleum engineering. And that allows me to do a lot of other things. I mean, it's just what I call mailbox money. Just basically just let the fields sort of run themselves. And the people who have maintained it, it's only a couple people rather than several battalions of people that run around adjusting things, as we see down in the Permian Basin or up in the Bakken or the Marcellus. But we do have a little bit of gas. We used to be mainly all gas and converted to oil in 2007. And now we're getting back into natural gas. There's quite a bit of it actually in eastern Kansas. It's low volume, low production rates, but at the same point, you're in your market area, which is the key to actually most oil and gas plays. If you want to do well, for example, the Marcellus is really in the market area, whereas the Midland Basin and the Delaware Basin really are not. All of the gas there has to go somewhere, as well as the oil, which I think right now the deductibles are $17 to $20 for a barrel of oil from West Texas intermediate prices. So that's a significant impediment to developing those assets to their full extent in a short period of time.
Right. And I also had one question about is your company like ProMap Corp? You said it started like as a mapping company, but then it merged with a cannabis industry company. I was just wondering, how did that relate?
You got into cannabis, Steve?
I've been in a couple cannabis companies, but I don't use the stuff. But I do use the CBD oil, which is very helpful for certain medical things.
Okay.
ProMap
you're
was a public
in
company.
Colorado, so I mean it makes sense.
Yeah, right. But ProMap, we turned into a public company, and it made oil and gas maps. So that business sort of died after a while, and it's simply because everything got digital and everybody could do it internally. There's several states that provide data for free, and so we rolled a cannabis company into it called General Cannabis, or it's called General Cannabis now. And I also work with a group out of Canada to get their company public as well. And it's just like everything else. I mean, if it's legal and you can make money at it, and you don't have to be a proponent of it, but it just worked out well for us.
Well, I have a funny story with this, like cannabis. I mean, medicinal cannabis just passed in Oklahoma. And personally, I think, any plant that can be used for productive medicine, why not? But I don't have any relation to it at all. So anyway, I bought a house that I'm rehabbing, well, demolishing inside, and so I hired an architect. And so he printed out the blueprints. I picked them up. And it said, instead of my name on the bottom, it said, Green Clean Cannabis Company. What? What on earth is this? And so I go, hey, Dave Beck, he's a great architect. Anyway, I go, what is Green Clean Cannabis? And he goes, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. He was designing some greenhouses for some people that were starting something like that. I go, well, we need to change the label on this. It should be, instead of Green Clean Cannabis, should be Dirty Old Opioid.
Oh gosh.
But anyway.
Oh, so funny.
So,
all right, yeah.
So it's really booming. Cannabis thing is booming. I mean, I think they'll come up with all kinds of new medicinal purposes for it. So it's nice.
Well, the big push is in hemp now.
All right.
Yeah,
all kinds of hemp products.
Right. Well, hemp is used in a lot of things besides medicinal, but it has no THC in it, and subsequently, it's the CBD oils that come out of it are strictly non-addicting and that sort of thing. And this country's imported hemp for years because it was related to marijuana. In rope, we use it in clothes, we use it as fillers for a variety of things, and so subsequently now, we'll see a boom market in hemp. You can actually grow it in fields rather than in greenhouses or confined spaces. In Colorado.
Can it grow in saline waters?
I don't think so.
Just wondering.
It's not a mangrove. Anyway, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think we're just about the end of our time. And
Okay.
Steve, I know you've answered this question before, but let's see if you answer in a different way this time. What gives you an edge in life? What's the one thing about yourself? Yeah, what's been giving you an edge in life?
Well, being on the roller coaster ride called the oil and gas industry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Makes you resilient.
Up and down, up and down. I just can't get off. I love it so much. But no, it's just finding new technology, staying ahead of the pack. When everybody's going one direction, go another direction, because eventually they'll come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great to learn about you and everything. Yeah, it's great to meet you and to get caught up on what you're doing. Everything sounds really promising, and I wish you the best of luck with everything. Susan, any last thoughts? Well,
thanks, Steve, and I really believe in what you're doing, and I think it's just a matter of finding the right places, and it's great.
Right. No, I think it's going to become more and more a wave of the future, especially with all these climate concerns and shutting down the coal-fired plants. So we've got to find other sources of energy, and natural gas is going to be a
and avoiding flaring it. I mean, just like that's such waste. So at least we can use it. That's wonderful. I applaud what you're doing.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate being on.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks, Susan, as always. Thanks, Steve.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Steve's website or give him a call if you're interested. And we'll see you next week on Life Edge. Bye bye now.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.